Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of AA Entertainment. For the longest time, I liked to consider myself a horror movie fan, and that's because I really like scary movies. However, I find that whenever I speak to most horror movie fanatics, it seems as though we're speaking completely different languages, whether it's because what I consider scary and what they consider scary is completely different, and that's also because, having seen so many scary movies, it takes a lot, and I mean a lot, for a movie to actually terrify me. So for today, here's the list of 10 horror movies that will actually scare you and keep you up at night. At number 10, The Blair Witch Project. Released in 1999, when the internet was simultaneously becoming more accessible, but not enough to prove or disprove certain topics such as that of a missing trio of documentary film students. Heather Donahue, as a student filmmaker who recruits her two best friends to help her direct a documentary concerning the history of the dreaded Blair Witch. Deciding to camp out in the woods, the trio get completely lost, and combined with the lack of food, sleep, and basic necessities, gradually grow insane. Combined with the possibility they are being watched by someone or something, this film looks and feels so realistic thanks to the camera and sound quality, as well as the actors who are more or less ran through the ringer in real life. Seeing these innocent friends fall victim to such a dreadful fate, worse than death, is absolutely dreadful, and the ending always sends chills down my spine. Not to mention, we are left completely clueless of who or what was after the group. At number 9, Dracula. Okay, it was a tough tie between this and Frankenstein, but I had to include a Bela Lugosi film in this list. Plus I saw the two at about the same time. Based on the classic Bram Stoker novel and directed by the OG master of macabre, Todd Browning, Bela Lugosi steals the show as the mysterious, sensual, and overall intimidating Count Dracula. Although the film took many artistic liberties from the novel due to budgetary reasons, the film manages to create a nightmare-induced fantasy-like atmosphere from start to finish. A real estate agent, played by another great actor, Dwight Fry, or Fright Die, as a Looney Renfield, visits the Count in his home in Transylvania, but is then taken as a slave and lives off of bugs and rats as nourishment. In the meantime, Dracula travels to London, where he seduces women and takes a special liking to Mina, whom he terrorizes day and night in hopes of taking her as his bride to the underworld of the dead. This is one of the earliest horror films I have ever seen, and to this day, it holds a special place in my heart thanks to its eerie atmosphere. At number 8, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I can't remember if I was 12 or 13 when I saw this, but I do remember I watched it on Impact On Demand, which was my go-to channel for 70s and 80s B-movies. Let's Scare Jessica to Death is a 1971 eerie and trippy film about a woman, Jessica, who was just released from an asylum due to having constant visions of ghosts. She and her husband decide to move to a small and quiet town with their friend, where they are treated like outsiders. The house comes with an interesting addition, and I'm not talking about a terrifying history, but a squatter, a young hippie girl. Unfortunately, Jessica's mind continues to gradually deteriorate as her visions go out of control and get the better of her, and the new tenant might have something to do with it. I remember watching this on a Saturday, and this movie not only left me feeling uneasy, but trippy as well. I mean really trippy, and the feeling stuck with me for years, having me return again and again to this underappreciated masterpiece. At number 7, Eyes Without a Face. Is it possible for a movie to be poetic, tragic, beautiful, and absolutely horrific all at the same time? The answer is yes. Eyes Without a Face is a 1960 French film about a respected surgeon whom, driven mad after a car accident has left his daughter disfigured, keeps her locked in his house wearing a blank white mask, which, just like the movie, is beautiful, but not something I'd like to see at the foot of my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. In hopes of resurrecting his daughter's beauty, the mad and desperate surgeon has his assistant prowl the streets of Paris to lure and kidnap young beautiful women so he can surgically remove the face and sew it onto his daughters, which leads to one of the single most graphic and spine-tingling scenes ever put to film. While all of this is going on, we are given a glimpse into the mind of the tragic Christiane as she walks around her house alone and heartbroken like a ghost. Complemented with an amazing score by the always amazing Maurice Jarre, I cannot stress how badly y'all need to watch this movie. At number 6, Dario Argento's Suspiria. Directed by the Giallo master Dario Argento and complemented with an eerie score by the Italian rock band Goblin, Suspiria is a 1977 Italian horror film starring Jessica Harper as Susie Bennion, an American ballet student who has come to Germany to study at a prestigious ballet school. Moments before she arrives, a woman runs through the woods on a dark and stormy night, and two women are ruthlessly murdered in long, drawn-out, and wince-inducing scenes, which the director is best known for. As Susie Bennion eagerly begins her courses, her suspicions grow as her health begins to fail her and she begins to see and hear strange things, not to mention the bodies piling up in more and more grotesque fashion. Without giving too much away, unlike most Giallo films, Suspiria has a more supernatural edge to it, which leads to more grotesque kills, disturbing imagery, and unexplained phenomena including a downpour of maggots which bombards the students. When the wallpaper of a film set terrifies you alone, you know the director has it in for you. At number 5, The Cat and the Canary. The visionary Paul Lani is in the director's chair for the magnum opus of the classic It Was a Dark and Stormy Night / Reading of a Dead Man's Will tale. Although there have been many reiterations with similar setups, having a German who was in the birthplace of expressionist and horror cinema offers a grandeur and far more elaborate twist on this Hollywood film. Starring Laura LaPlante as Annabelle West, the sole remaining relative bearing the name of the infamous Cyrus West, an invalid who was driven insane by his greedy relatives, is tasked with staying the night along with several other jealous relatives at Cyrus's haunted estate, where no other people have set foot for many years, except for the maid. As if spending the night in an already haunted house wasn't bad enough, a serial killer from a local insane asylum has escaped and is on the run. The serial killer has been reported to dress up in a macabre costume and tears his victims quite literally to pieces. Then, as the lawyer is prepared to announce the name of the heir who is to inherit Cyrus's wealth if Annabelle is declared insane, is dragged behind a bookcase and is murdered. The Cat and the Canary is on the surface level a haunted house silent film, but with Paul Lani's masterful direction and the eerie atmosphere makes this film for one nightmare-inducing uncomfortable watch. At number 4, The Monster. Yes, I know, I already mentioned this in my Lon Chaney video, but come on, I said it then and I'll say it now. The Monster is a damned effective scary movie, set in an abandoned insane asylum on a dark and stormy night. The monster more than likely took inspiration from the classic Edgar Allan Poe short story, The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. After one of the lunatics from the asylum gets the upper hand in a mutiny against the staff of the hospital, Lon Chaney and his droogs sneak out at night and cause unsuspecting travelers to run their cars off the road by frightening them. Once this is done, the victims are taken unconscious to the asylum and are taken prisoners so Lon Chaney's Dr. Zizka can experiment on them. This is one of the greatest and most eerily effective haunted house in Lon Chaney films and contains one of the single most chilling scenes in any horror film ever made. At number 3, Rosemary's Baby. Much like my previous entry, there is no secret that I am in love with this movie and will more than likely bring it up in future videos. Based on the Ira Levine novel, Roman Polanski ups the scares and insanity in this film about pregnancy gone wrong, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I should also mention that this, alongside Repulsion and The Tenant, the 3 movies form a loose trilogy exploring the anxieties and alienation of apartment life. In Rosemary's Baby, Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse move into an apartment, and if you thought your neighbors were from hell, I think these guys take the cake. After a vicious nightmare in which she gets raped by the devil, Rosemary struggles relentlessly through her pregnancy and even suspects her satanic neighbors intend to sacrifice her baby. Let's face it, we're in the hands of the same director who made Macbeth fucking scary and bleak and interesting. So with that in mind, the exploration of the occult and Satanism is very prevalent, creating a disturbing picture, not to mention the eventual fate of both the mother and the baby. At number 2, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Holy hell, where do I begin with this one? Much like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, this 1974 gore fest went on to spawn numerous sequels and remakes, but none of them can hold a candle to the original. Made on a shoestring budget by Tobe Hooper, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is honestly the only film that ever gave me any actual nightmares, as an adult, and more than once. The entire cast was miserable throughout the shoot because of the unbearable Texas weather, lack of personal hygiene, and the rotting food and roadkill we see throughout the film, and all of that seems to affect viewers beyond the screen. The opening is terrifying as we hear footsteps and ominous music, while close-up images of human corpses from a crime scene are shown. Throughout the film, we hear the inside of an actual slaughterhouse, for entertainment purposes. Our key villain is Leatherface, a mentally handicapped man who wears the faces of other humans and murders people with either a sledgehammer or a chainsaw so he can carve up their carcasses and serve them up for dinner. His brother, a hitchhiker, equally disgusting and unpleasant to be around. His hobbies include taking candid photos of people, talking about head cheese, and cutting people up with razors. The Texas Chainsaw is just so raw, visceral, realistic, and gritty that if you are unfazed by this, you scare me. At number 1, The Haunting. Based on the novel The Haunting of Hill House by horror guru Shirley Jackson, veteran film director Robert Wise was so spooked by the book that he decided to go ahead and adapt it into one of the single most terrifying and cerebral films ever made. Dr. John Markway is an anthropologist. He recruits 3 people to spend some time in a supposedly haunted house with a dark history. Julie Harris plays Eleanor, a frustrated woman alienated by the world and her family. Seems to be the most drawn to the mansion, and even seems to be the one the ghosts speak to the most. I'm not a big fan of supernatural films, but part of what makes The Haunting truly effective is instead of seeing CGI clowns and ghosts screaming at you every 5 minutes, everything that happens comes across incredibly realistic to the point it makes you think twice about that creaking door or those strange sounds emanating from the other room. Plus, it's based on a book from one of my favorite authors of all time, Shirley Jackson. Thank you all for watching this, and let me know in the comment section down below what movie truly gave you nightmares, or at least kept you up at night.